back. Ay, ay, ay. Not really. I carry a gate key in case I get here before anyone else, or if I'm the last to leave. But only Fred and Lane have all the keys to the kingdom. She laughed as if I said something silly. The key to the gate is the key to the kingdom. That's what I think. Then she sobered and gave me a long measuring stare. You look older, Devin. I thought so even before we got off the train. When I saw you waiting on the platform. Now I know why. You went to work and we went back to Never Never Land to play with the lost boys and girls. The one who will eventually turn up in suits from Brooks Brothers and with MBAs in their pockets. I pointed to the briefcase. That would go with the suit from Brooks Brothers. If they really make suits for women, that is. She sighed. It was a gift from my parents. My father wants me to be a lawyer like him. So far, I haven't gotten up the nerve to tell him I want to be a freelance photographer. He'll blow static. We walked up. We walked up Joyland Avenue in silence, except for the bone-like rattle of the falling leaves. She looked at the covered rides, the dry fountain, the frozen horses on the merry-go-round, the empty storage stage in the deserted Wiggle Waggle village. Kind of sad seeing it this way. It makes me think mortal thoughts. She looked at me appraisingly. We saw the paper. Miss Shoplaw made sure to live in our room. You did it again. Eddie? I just happened to be there. I just happened to be there. We had reached Madame Fortuna's shy. The lawn chairs were still leaning against it. I unfolded two and gestured for Erin to sit down. I sat beside her, then I pulled a pint bottle of old log cabin from the pocket of my jacket. Cheap whiskey, but it takes the chill off. Looking amused, she took a small nip. I took one of my own, screwed on the cap, and stowed the bottle in my pocket. 50 yards down Jordan Avenue, our midway, I could see the tall, false front of the horror house and read the drippy green letters. Come in if you dare. Her small hand gripped my shoulder with surprising strength. You saved the old bastard. You did. Give yourself some credit, you. I smiled, thinking of Lane saying I had a merit badge in modesty. Maybe giving myself credit for stuff wasn't one of my strong points in those days. Will he live? Will he live? Probably. Freddie Dean talked to some doctors who said blah, blah, blah. Patient must give up smoking, blah, blah, blah. Patient must give up eating french fries, blah, blah, blah. Patient must begin a regular exercise regimen. I can just see Eddie Parks jogging, Aaron said. Uh-huh. With with the cigarette in his mouth and a bag of pork rinds in his hands, she giggled. The wind gusted and blew her hair around her face and her heavy sweater and business-like dark gray pants. She didn't look much like the flush American beauty who'd run around Joyland in a little green dress, smiling her pretty Aaron smile and coaxing people to let her take their picture with her old-fashioned camera. What have you got for me? What did you find out? She opened her briefcase and took out a folder. Are you absolutely sure you want to get into this? Because I don't think you're going to listen. Say elementary. Say elementary, my dear Aaron, and spit out the killer's name like Sherlock Holmes. If I needed evidence that Sherlock Holmes, I wasn't. My wild idea that Eddie Parks might have been the so-called funhouse killer was it. I thought of telling her that I was more interested in putting the victim to rest than I was in catching the killer, but it would have sounded crazy even factoring in Tom's experience. I'm not expecting that either. And by the way, you owe me almost $40 for interlibrary loan fees. I'm good for it. She poked me in the ribs. You better be. I'm not working my way through school for the fun of it. She settled her briefcase between her ankles and opened the folder. I saw exorcised, two or three pages of typewritten notes, and some glossy photographs that looked like the kind the Coneys got when they bought the Hollywood Girls pitch. Okay, here we go. I started with the Charleston News and Courier article you told me about. She handed me one of the exorcisms. It's a Sunday piece, 5,000 words of speculation, and maybe 800 words of actual info. Read it later if you want. I'll summarize the salient points. Four girls, five if you count her. She pointed down the midway at her house. The first was Delight Marbury, Dee Dee to her friends from Waycross, Georgia, white, 21 years old. 2 or 3 days before she was killed, she told her good friend Jasmine Withers that she had a new boyfriend, older and very handsome. She was found beside a trail on the edge of the Okefenokee swamp on August 31st, 1961. 9 days after she disappeared. 9 days after she disappeared. If the guy had taken her into the swamp even a little way, she might not have been found for a much longer time. If ever, I said, a body left in there would have gator bait in 20 minutes. Gross, but true. She handed me another Xerox. This is the story from the Waycross Journal Herald. There was a photo. It showed a somber cop holding up a plaster cast of tire tracks. The theory is that he dumped her where he cut her throat. The tire tracks were made by a truck, the story says. Dumped her like garbage, I said. Also gross but true. She handed me another Xerox newspaper clipping. Here's number 2. Claudine Sharp from Rocky Mount, right here in NC. White, 23 years old, found dead in a local theater, August 2nd, 1963. The movie being shown was Lawrence of Arabia, which happens to be very long and very loud. The guy who wrote the story quotes an unnamed police source as saying the guy probably cut her throat during one of the battle scenes. Pure speculation, of course. He left a bloody shirt and gloves, then must have walked out in the shirt he was wearing underneath. This just about has to be the guy who killed Linda Gray, I said. Don't you think so? It sure sounds like it. The cops questioned all her friends, but Claudine hadn't said anything about a new boyfriend or who she was going to the movies with that night. Not even to her parents or who she was going to the movies with that night. Not even to her parents. Erin gave me a patient look. She was 23, Dev, not 14. She lived all the way across town from her parents, worked in a drugstore, and had a little apartment above it. You got all that from the newspaper story? Of course not. I also made some calls, practically dialed my fingers off, if you want to know the truth. You owe me for the long distance too. More about Claudine Sharp later. For now, let's move on. Victim number 3, according to the news and Courier story, was a girl from Santee, South Carolina. Now we're up to 1965. Eva Longbottom, age 19, black, disappeared on July 4th. Her body was found 9 days later by a couple of fishermen, lying on the north bank of the Santee River, raped and stabbed in the heart. The others were neither black nor raped. You can put her in the funhouse killer column if you want to, but I'm doubtful myself. Last victim before Linda Gray was her. She handed me what had to be a high school yearbook photo of a beautiful golden-haired girl. The kind who's the head cheerleader, the homecoming queen, dates the football quarterback, and is still liked by everyone. Darlene Stamnacker. probably would have changed her last name if she'd gotten into the movie biz, which was her stated goal. White, 19, from Maxton, North Carolina, disappeared on June 29, 1967. Found 2 days later after a massive church inside a after a massive search inside a roadside lean to inside a roadside lean to in the Sugar Pine Willie Wags south of Elrod. Throat cut. Christ, she's beautiful. Didn't she have a steady boyfriend? A girl this good looking? Why do you even ask? And that's where the police went first. Only he wasn't around. He and three of his buddies had gone camping in the Blue Ridge, and they could all vouch for him. Unless he flapped his arms and flew back, it wasn't him. Then came Linda Gray, I said, number 5. If they were all murdered by the same guy, that is. Aaron raised a teacherly figure, and only 5 if all the guy's victims had been found. There could have been others in 62, 64, 66, you get it. The wind gusted and moaned through the struts of the spin. Not for the things that trouble me, Aaron said, as if 5 dead girls weren't troubling enough. From her folder, she took another Xerox. It was a flyer, a shout, and a talk, advertising something called Manly Wellman's Show of 1,000 Wonders. It showed a couple of clowns holding up a parchment listing some of the wonders, one of which was America's greatest collection of freaks and oddities. There were also rides, games, fun for the kiddies, and the world's scariest funhouse. Come in if you dare, I thought. You got this from interlibrary loan. You got this from interlibrary loan? I asked. Yes, I've decided you can get anything by way of interlibrary loan if you're willing to dig. Or maybe I should say cock an ear, because it's really the world's biggest jungle telegraph. This ad appeared in the Waycross Journal Herald. It ran during the first week of August 1961. The Whaleman Carney was in Waycross when the first girl disappeared. The Whaleman Carney was in Waycross when the first girl disappeared. Her name was Dee Dee Marbury, and no, it had moved on by then, but it was there when Dee Dee told her girlfriend that she had a new boyfriend. Now look at this. It's from Rocky Mount Telegram. Ran for a week in mid-July of 1963. Standard advanced advertising. I probably don't even need to tell you that. It was another full page of shouting Manly Wellman's Show of 1,000 Wonders. Same 2 clowns holding up the same parchment. But 2 years after stop in Waycross, they were also promising a $10,000 coverall Beano game, and the world of freaks was nowhere to be seen. Was the show in town when the sharp girl was killed in a movie theater? Left the day before. She tapped the bottom of the sheet. All you have to do is look at the date staff. I wasn't as familiar with the timeline as she was, but I didn't bother defending myself. The third girl? Longbottom? I didn't find anything about a Carney in the Santee area, and I sure wouldn't have found anything about the Wellman Show, because it went bust in the fall of 1964. I found that in outdoor trade and industry. So far as I or any of my many librarian helpers could discover, it's the only trade magazine that covers the Carney and the amusement park biz. Jesus, Aaron, you should forget photography and find yourself a rich writer or a movie producer. Hire on as his research assistant. I'd rather take pictures. Research is too much like work. But don't lose the thread here, Devin. There was no Carney in the Santee area, true, but the Eva Longbottom murder doesn't look like the other 4 anyway, not to me. No raping the others, remember? That you know of. Newspapers are coy about that stuff. That's right. They say molested or sexually assaulted instead of rape, but they get the point across, believe me. What about Darlene Shoemaker? Was there Stamnacker? These girls were murdered. That the least you can do is get their names right. I will. Give me time. She put a hand over mine. Sorry, I'm throwing this at you all at once, aren't I? I've had weeks to brood over it. Have you been? Sort of. It's pretty awful. She was right. If you read Who Done It or see a mystery movie, you can whistle gaily past whole heaps of corpse, only interested in finding out if it was the butler or the evil stepmother. But these had been real young women. Crows had probably ripped their flesh. Maggots would have infested their eyes and squirmed up their noses and into the gray meat of their brains. Was there a carny in the Maxton area when the Stamnaker girl was killed? No, but there was a county fair about to start in Lumberton. That's the nearest town of any size here. She handed me another Xerox, this one advertising the Robeson County Summer Fair. Once again, Erin tapped the sheet. This time, she was calling my attention to a line reading 50 safe rides provided by Southern Star Amusements. I also looked I also looked Southern Star up in outdoor trade and industry. The company's been around since after World War II. They're based in Birmingham and travel all over the South, putting up rides. Nothing so grand as the Thunderball or the Delirium Shaker, but they've got plenty of chump shoots, and the jogs to run them. I had to grin at that. She hadn't forgotten all the talk. It seemed. Chump shoots were rides that could be easily put up or taken down. If you've ever ridden the Crazy Cups or the Wild Mouse, you've been on a chump shoot. I called the ride boss at Southern Star, said I'd work at JOYLAND this summer and was doing a term paper on the amusement industry for my sociology class, which I just might do, you know. After all this, it would be a slam dunk. He told me what I'd already guessed. That there's a big turnover in their line of work. He couldn't tell me offhand if they picked up anyone from the women show, but he said it was likely. A couple of roughies here, a couple of jock a couple of roughies here, a couple of jocks there, maybe a ride monkey or two. So the guy who killed Dee Dee and Claudine could have been at the fair, and Darlene Stamnacker could have met him. The fair wasn't officially open for business yet, but lots of townies gravitate to the local fairgrounds to watch the ride monkeys and the local gazunis do the setup. She looked at me levelly, and I think that's just what happened. Erin is the Carney link in the story the News and Courier published after Linda Gray was Aaron, is the Carney link in the story the News and Courier published after Linda Gray was killed? Or maybe I should call it the amusement link. Nope. Can I have another nip from your bottle? I'm cold. We can go inside. Nope. It's this murder stuff that makes me cold every time I go over it. I gave her the bottle, and after she'd taken her nip, I took one of my own. Maybe you're Sherlock Holmes, I said. What about the cops? Do you think they missed it? I don't know for sure, but I think they did. If this was a detective show on TV, there'd be one smart old cop, a Lieutenant Colombo type, who would look at the big picture and put it together. But I guess there wasn't many guys like that in real life. Besides, the big picture is hard to see because it's scattered across 3 states and 8 years. One thing you can be sure is that one thing you can be sure of is that if he ever worked at Joland, he's long gone. I'm sure the turnover at an amusement park isn't as fast as it is in a road company like Southern Star Amusements, but there are still plenty of people leaving and coming in. I knew that for myself. Ride jocks and concession shouters aren't exactly the most grounded people, and Gazunis went in and out like the tide. Now here's the other thing that troubles me, she said, and handed me her little pile of 8 by 10 photos. Printed on the white border at the bottom of each was photo taken by your Jordan Hollywood girl. I shuffled through them and felt in need of another nip when I realized what they were. The photos showing Linda Gray and the man who killed her. Jesus God, Aaron. These are newspaper pics. Where'd you get them? Brenda Rafferty. I had to butter her up. I had to butter her up a little bit. A little. Tell her what a good mom she'd been to all us Hollywood girls. But in the end, she came through. These are fresh prints made from negatives she had in her personal files and loaned to me. Here's something interesting, Dev. You see the headband in the gray girl's wearing? Yes. And Alice band. Miss Shapwell called it a blue Alice band. Brenda said they fussed that out in the shots they gave to the newspapers. They thought it would help them nail the guy, but it never did. So what troubles you? God knew all the pictures troubled me. Even the ones where Gray and the man she was with were just